I spent most of my life holding this family together. I raised my son on my own, and when he had a child I stepped in again. 10 full years of caregiving, sleepless nights and school pickups. And in the end, all I got was a casual, "Mom, it's time for you to move into a retirement home." My son and his family announced they were immigrating to Canada. Better quality of life, more opportunities, they said. The house needed to be sold, the assets liquidated. Me. They promised they'd make proper arrangements. The way they said it, it was like deciding where to board a cat for the weekend. Nothing more than a logistical footnote. "Don't overthink it. We believe living apart is what's best for you," they said. At what point did the person who gave the most become the one easiest to discard? At what point did staying in my own home become a luxury? The day I moved into the facility, my grandson snuck over and slipped a folded piece of paper into my pocket. Just 10 words on it, but they broke me. I cried the moment I read it. And that night I made a decision, one that no one saw coming. One that tore their neatly written script into pieces. What did that note say? And how did I, step by step, reclaim the years they tried to erase? My name is Grace Whitmore. I'm 62 years old and I live in a creaky 3-story house tucked away in the suburbs of San Francisco, California. This morning I was awake before the sun even came up. I rubbed my face, slipped on a cardigan and shuffled downstairs, flicking on the kitchen light in the half-dark. I scooped out some flour, cracked a couple of eggs and stirred in a slab of butter, already thinking about the peanut butter cookies Noah loves best. Noah is my grandson. He's in 6th grade now, but I've been raising him since he was 2. He says he can't remember if his dad ever picked him up from school, and he's not sure if his mom ever sat down to eat dinner with him, but he remembers his grandma's cookies. He stayed home today. He had a nasty cough last night, so I called in for him this morning and told the school he wouldn't be coming. Now he's slouched over our old round kitchen table, chewing on a pencil while scribbling in his workbook. His hair's a mess and his eyes still look half asleep. "Grandma," he mumbled, "can I make a giant cookie today?" "If you can finish it, maybe," I said with a grin. "I don't care if I can't, I'm still making it," he said, suddenly sitting up straighter, eyes sparkling. I handed him a lump of dough and he squashed it flat with both hands. "I'm adding double the powdered sugar," he announced. Sugar dusted the table like snow. I reached for his sleeve, gently reminding him, "If you keep this up, I'll have to wash this shirt again tomorrow." Without even looking up, he said, "You always help me." As if it was the most natural thing in the world, like he was born knowing I'd do anything for him. I looked at the powdered sugar stuck to the corner of his mouth and felt something warm and heavy settle in my chest. This child, he's the only proof I have that my life was never truly lonely. I used to believe this house would always be full of life. When I was younger, Robert and I ran a little corner store together. The street beside our house was narrow, but the neighbors all knew each other's names. We'd head out at 5 in the morning to stock up, take turns cooking and watching the kids in the afternoons. It was exhausting, but as long as I could sit down with a cup of tea at the end of the day, my heart felt steady. Robert passed when I was 42. He had just gotten out of the shower that day and told me he had a craving for blueberry pie. I said I'd check the store for fresh blueberries the next day. He smiled and nodded, and then just like that he collapsed. From that day on, the house went quiet. No more footsteps, no more arguing over who was cooking dinner. I made less food. The TV stayed off. Even the old cat started going to bed early. And just when the silence felt unbearable, Noah arrived. "Mom, both our jobs got relocated out of town. There's no one home during the day," Laura, my daughter-in-law, had said on the phone. I didn't ask questions. The next morning I cleared out the junk from the upstairs guest room, laid out an old quilt and rolled in a baby crib. From that moment on, I was back to waking up at 5 a.m., making oatmeal and frying eggs. Noah was a slow eater, so I fed him spoon by spoon, singing nursery rhymes to coax him. At night, he tossed and turned, refusing to sleep unless I held him until he dozed off. He couldn't form full sentences yet, but I could tell just from his cries when he was hungry, tired, or needed a clean diaper. The house had felt hollow before. But somehow this tiny person filled every corner. Sometimes I think maybe God saw how lonely I was and sent Noah to give me a reason to keep going. When Noah got older, David, my son, said it was time for him to have his own room. I nodded and said sure, but deep down I knew Noah wouldn't like the idea. I was right. That night, after I tucked him into the newly furnished room upstairs, he came tiptoeing back an hour later, wearing his little slippers and clutching his ragged stuffed bunny, eyes red from crying. He climbed straight into my bed and whispered, "Grandma, I don't like that room. It's too cold." I wrapped my arms around him and rubbed his back. He rested his head on my chest and was asleep within minutes, his breath soft and warm against my arm. He's always kicked the covers off in his sleep. I've grown used to waking up 3 or 4 times a night just to tuck him back in. When the AC's running too strong, I feel him stir and pull the blanket up before he even shivers. On the nights he's had a fever, it's always me who senses the heat off his forehead before the thermometer even clicks. My retirement check isn't much, just $2,000 a month. After paying the utilities, groceries, and making our regular donation to church, I'm left with maybe $700 or $800 I can actually use. Every expense has to be planned down to the penny. Meals, school tuition, textbooks, uniforms, pencils, tutoring, none of it comes cheap. I wear old clothes. The same pair of pants I've had for 3 years has been altered twice. The cuffs on my sweaters are pilled, but I can't bring myself to throw them out. When the soles of my shoes wear thin, I take them to the cobbler on the corner for a new layer and keep wearing them. But when it comes to Noah, I never cut corners. The year he started elementary school, his teeth were all over the place, crowded and crooked. The dentist said braces would cost $5,000. I spent 3 nights lying awake, and then I took a gold ring I'd bought over a decade ago and pawned it. I got $1,600 for it. Added in the coins I'd saved over the years and somehow scraped together just enough. The dentist looked up at me and asked, "Are you his mom?" I smiled. "No, I'm his grandmother. But honestly, close enough." Noah loves to draw, so every month I save up a little extra to buy him a new sketchbook and a box of colored pencils. Sometimes he gets so caught up in his drawings that he forgets to eat, so I sit beside him sharpening pencils and slicing fruit. He knows I work hard for him. Every time he places in the top 3 at school, he grins from ear to ear as he hangs the certificate on the wall and asks, "Grandma, does this one come with a prize?" "Of course," I tell him. "Tonight you get an extra peanut butter cookie." We both laugh like it's the best deal in the world. And in those moments, I swear, it all feels worth it. Even the tight budget, even the worn-out shoes. Every bit of it. Now Noah is 12. He's almost up to my shoulder and wears the same shoe size as I do. He does his homework on his own, helps me hang the laundry, and even pitches in with dinner sometimes so I can rest my feet for a while. One night he looked up from his pillow and said, "Grandma, I dreamed you got lost." I froze for a second. "What happened in the dream?" I asked. "I couldn't find you," he said, eyes glistening. "There were people everywhere, but no one would listen to me." I brushed his hair back and tried to smile. "Did you find me in the end?" He nodded, then whispered, "But when I woke up I cried. I was scared you'd really be gone." I didn't say anything. I just pulled him close and held him tighter. The cookies were ready. I turned off the oven and set the tray on the table. "Noah, dinner's ready," I called. He jumped down from his chair and pulled me over to sit beside him. He took a big bite of a warm peanut butter cookie and said, "Grandma, when I grow up I'm gonna learn how to make these just like you." I nodded and took a bite too. The taste was warm and buttery, exactly right, but my throat tightened all of a sudden like something had caught there. 10 years. It had all gone by like a dream, slow and fast, full and fleeting, until the day David and Laura returned. That night I made Noah's favorite, braised chicken thighs. I'd gone to the store and bought a whole chicken, cut it up and let it simmer into something rich and fragrant. When I lifted the lid off the pot, the smell filled the entire kitchen. He took a deep breath, grinning. "Grandma, is today a special occasion?" I smiled back. "Not really. Just thought you could use something hearty. Your cold's almost gone." He dug in happily, mouth shiny with chicken grease. I sat across from him, quietly watching, my heart light. But when I brought out the last bowl of salad and returned to the living room, something in the air had changed. David and Laura's expressions shifted. "Mom, there's something we need to talk to you about," David said, and I could tell by his tone that nothing good was coming. They sat across from me at the coffee table. Papers were spread out across the surface, along with a printed plane ticket. "We've decided to immigrate," he said. "To Vancouver, Canada. Our skilled worker application was approved, and we're planning to move by the end of the year." Before I could even process it, Laura jumped in. "The whole family's going, including Noah. The schools are better there." My eyes darted to Noah. His fork was frozen midair, a piece of chicken breast clutched between the tines. He didn't move a muscle. Mom, we were going to wait for the right moment, David said, sighing as he pulled a sheet from the pile and held it out to me. But the documents came through today. There are some things we need to take care of quickly. This is a property management agreement. You just need to sign here. We'll handle renting out the house and taking care of it. The rental income will be saved for you. We've already looked into a retirement facility. Really great place. Full-time staff, 3 meals a day, clean, safe. We'll transfer money to your account every month. My hand trembled. I didn't take the paper. Instead, I looked him straight in the eye. You're asking me to move out of my own home? Laura rushed to explain. It's not that we're kicking you out, Mom. We just want to make sure you're settled somewhere safe. Living alone here isn't good for you. But this is my house, I said quietly. Your father made sure of that. Before he passed, he left a will. He said I could live here for the rest of my life. David kept his tone even. We're not changing the title. It's just for management. Once you're no longer living here, it'll be Noah's. I turned to Noah. He still hadn't looked up. His hand was clenched around his fork like it was the only thing anchoring him. I swallowed hard. And what if I don't want to go? They exchanged a glance. Laura softened her voice. Then, we might have to involve a lawyer. It's not about forcing you, Mom. We just can't stay behind, and leaving you alone here isn't right. Isn't right for me? I gave a short, bitter laugh. You're asking me to move into a facility and give up the home I've lived in for 40 years. And that's for my own good. Noah suddenly dropped his bowl with a loud clatter. His voice cracked. Grandma, don't go. The room fell silent. Laura's tone cooled instantly. Noah, that's not your place. Didn't you say the retirement home looked really nice? David's voice grew sharp. Noah, that's enough. I turned back to Noah. Do you really want me to leave? His head stayed low. His lips were trembling. The rims of his eyes were turning red. I don't want you to disappear. For a long moment I couldn't speak. The chicken on the table had gone cold. The kitchen lights were still on, but the whole house felt like it had been gutted by a gust of cold wind. I slowly pushed the paper away. I'll think about it. They both let out relieved breaths. Laura leaned in. Mom, really, try to see this differently. It'll be easier for you. Yeah, David nodded. No more cooking, no more laundry. You'll be taken care of. And we'll send money every month. The way they said taken care of made it sound like a polished transaction. Sign this paper and in return we'll buy you a comfortable old age. I didn't say another word. Noah quietly cleared the table. His small frame looked unusually still, his shoulders trembling just slightly. And I suddenly remembered the day I told him Robert had died. How he didn't cry, didn't shout. He just stood there, still and hollow, like the world had drained out of him. After dinner I stood alone at the kitchen sink washing dishes. The sound of running water filled the room as my hands worked through the suds over and over. But my mind couldn't stop echoing the words they'd just said. Mom, it's not safe for you to be here alone. Unsafe? I've lived in this house for 40 years. I can cook, fix things, hem torn pants for growing boys. What part of that is unsafe? But I didn't say it out loud. I just dried each dish one by one and stacked them neatly in the cupboard. In that moment I knew. Their minds were already made up. And I was nothing more than one more item on their relocation checklist. The kitchen light was dim. I stood there for a long moment before finally flipping the switch and heading upstairs. Noah had already bathed. He was curled up in bed, clutching his old stuffed bunny. The moment he saw me, he reached out and tugged on my sleeve. Grandma, are you really leaving? I gently touched his forehead. There's no rush. We'll figure it out, okay? He nodded and leaned into my chest just like he used to when he was small. I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling while the sound of light rain tapped against the eaves outside. Drip, 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 like the ticking of a clock nudging time forward. I knew. They'd already started sorting through my life. I didn't bring up the agreement again. The next morning I woke up early just like always and made oatmeal and fried eggs. Noah came down late, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. I smoothed out his messy hair and set his breakfast in front of him. He ate slowly. I didn't rush him. I just sat there watching him sip his oatmeal, pretending everything was still the same. Grandma, are you really going to move? He asked quietly. I bit into a piece of toast and answered flatly, haven't decided yet. Don't go, okay? He said, eyes downcast. I didn't reply. I just patted his head. Eat up before your oatmeal gets cold. This boy, he's always been too perceptive. He picks up on everything adults assume he doesn't understand. And instead of crying or making a scene, he just holds it in and presses a little closer to me like that's the only way to stay steady. That night, while the house was empty, I made my way alone to the storage room on the 3rd floor. This house hasn't changed much in decades. Back when Robert was still around, he kept all our documents in a metal filing cabinet, each drawer labeled in his neat handwriting: property deeds, insurance records, utility bills. He was meticulous. And after he died, I never had the heart to touch his files. I pulled open drawer after drawer, flipping through stacks of yellowing folders. Finally, buried at the very bottom, I found a thick envelope. My name, Grace Whitmore, was written across the front in deep blue ink. Inside was a property declaration from 1989, along with a notarized legal opinion stamped by a law office. I understood it immediately. Even though Robert and I bought the house together, the deed was in my name. And the document made it clear. This was a legally binding lifetime occupancy agreement. Unless I gave written consent, this house could not be rented, mortgaged, or sold. I closed the folder and held it against my chest, sitting in silence for a long time. What I felt wasn't anger. It was something quieter, deeper, a kind of sorrow. They weren't bad people. Just too busy, too practical, too used to managing other people's lives. They looked at my old age the way they looked at any other logistical task. A responsibility to offload, an asset to manage, a piece of real estate to repurpose. It never occurred to them that I was not someone who would go quietly. And I realized, they genuinely didn't think they'd done anything wrong. I tucked the documents into the back of my bedroom closet and stuck a note on the folder. Important. Do not touch. A reminder for myself. And maybe quietly a message to their plans. Not so fast. The next day I got up as usual. Cooked, cleaned, went about the house. Downstairs they were talking excitedly about life in Vancouver. How the air was fresh, how safe the neighborhoods were. How Noah would have the chance to attend the best private school in the area. If we can just wrap things up soon, get the paperwork filed, Laura said, then after we move he can come back and visit you all the time. Like Noah was a reward they could grant me. I smiled and nodded. Don't worry. Once I've sorted through my things I'll sign. David let out a visible breath. Thank you, Mom. I knew you'd understand. Laura added, it really means a lot to us. You're making this so much easier. I didn't call them out. Sometimes staying silent doesn't mean you're naive, and saying yes doesn't mean you've surrendered. I wasn't yielding. I was waiting. They thought my stillness meant submission. They mistook my calm for compliance. But when they finally relaxed, when they were convinced I'd bent to their will, I would begin piece by piece to take back what was mine. That night Noah crawled into my bed like he always did. I patted his back and he wrapped his arms around mine. Grandma, he whispered, will you miss me? Of course, I answered softly. If I'm not there, can you still fall asleep? I closed my eyes and said, when you're not with me I'll just dream about you. He gave a quiet curled into my chest like a kitten and drifted off not long after. Outside the window the wind stirred the leaves, soft, rhythmic, steady. And for a moment it felt like Robert was right beside me again, his voice in my ear. Don't be afraid. I clutched the document to my chest and told myself the same thing. I'm not afraid. I'm still standing on the foundation of this house. Even if the whole world moves away, I am still here. The morning I packed, dawn hadn't fully broken. A damp March chill clung to the air and the floor felt slick beneath my feet. I laid Noah's little slippers neatly beside his bed, afraid he might slip when he got up. He'd slept deeply the night before, not tossing and turning like he usually did. Maybe he sensed what was coming. All night he had clung to the blanket, face buried against my chest, sleeping hard like when he was small. Downstairs I brewed a pot of tea and sat at the kitchen table waiting for them to pick me up. David arrived on time. His car idled at the curb, engine running. Laura didn't come, she had work, she said and sent a message through David. Tell her not to worry. Just focus on resting and getting settled. They didn't want me carrying anything myself. In case you fall, they said. I hadn't packed much. Just a small leather suitcase with 2 changes of clothes, a cotton quilt, a pair of slippers, a box of medicine, and a spiral notebook filled with my handwritten recipes. I'd thought about making breakfast one last time, Hot pancakes and omelets, Noah's favorites. But David was already urging me, traffic might be bad. We should get there early so you can settle in. It's hard to describe how I felt. The house suddenly seemed too quiet. So quiet I could hear every creak under my footsteps like the floorboards were echoing goodbye. When it was almost time to leave, Noah still hadn't come down. I hesitated, wondering if I should go wake him, when I heard the rapid thump of footsteps overhead. He came flying down the stairs in his slippers, no words, no warning, just ran straight into my arms and hugged me tight around the waist, his face pressed against my stomach. I stood frozen for a second, then slowly wrapped my arms around his small shoulders. It's okay, sweetie. Grandma's just going to stay there for a little while. When your break comes, we'll bake peanut butter cookies again, all right? He nodded, but the tears started spilling over, falling one by one like beads on a broken string. Shoo, no more crying now, I said gently, pulling back. If you cry like this, I won't be able to leave. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but no sound came. Outside, David honked the horn. Twice. I sighed and stepped around Noah, walking past him toward the door. Just as I crossed the threshold, he tugged on the hem of my coat from behind and shoved a small folded piece of paper into my pocket. Grandma, don't open it now. Wait until you get there. I nodded silently, afraid that if I spoke I'd fall apart. I didn't look back when I got into the car. But as the window rolled up, I couldn't help turning my head. He was standing in the doorway wearing that old pilled sweater, fists clenched at his sides, toes curled into the wooden porch floorboards. He didn't move. Not 1 inch. The car turned the corner and just like that, the familiar old house vanished behind the bend. The retirement home sat on the edge of the city. A renovated brick building that, from the outside, looked clean and reasonably well kept. The front lobby was filled with soft light and polite smiles. The receptionist greeted me with warmth, and even the bathroom doors had neatly taped signs. Dehumidifying in progress. I sat on my new bed while the nurse walked me through the schedule. Meal times, medication times, lights out. I heard none of it. My stomach felt hollow. My chest, like someone had carved a piece right out of it. It wasn't until the lights went out that I remembered the note. I reached into my coat pocket and carefully unfolded the small piece of paper, smoothing it across my lap. Just a scrap from a student notebook. Noah's handwriting was slightly tilted, the letters big and uneven. He'd written only one sentence. Grandma, when I grow up, I'll bring you home. I stared at those words for a long time as if they might start speaking to me. Each letter was written slowly, pressed deep into the page, like he had engraved every ounce of his promise right into my heart. And then the tears came. A flood. A faucet left running. No way to stop it. He's only 12. And already he knows that being sent away is a form of injustice. He's only 12. But already he understands that a promise is the only protest you can make when you're too small to fight back. I clutched that note in both hands, sitting on a bed that wasn't mine in a room that wasn't mine, listening to the soft beeping of the motion sensor light outside the door. But my mind was back in that old wooden bed at home. The one we shared. The one Noah tossed and turned on every night. The one where I got up 3 times a night just to tuck him back in. That bed is still in the house. Waiting for me to return. But I didn't turn back. I just kept whispering the same words to myself over and over. When you grow up, Grandma will still be home. This place, the truth is it's not bad. The room is clean with AC and a large window. The bed is new. The pillows too high but manageable. The floors are mopped 3 times a day and the bathrooms are spotless. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner arrive on schedule. If you don't finish, there's a fridge in the room. On my first day, a young caregiver welcomed me with a bright smile. Mrs. Whitaker, he said, welcome to Golden Haven. I nodded. Thank you. He gave me a tour of the common areas. Puzzle tables, a tea station, a couple of residents watching the news on a mounted TV. A few nodded at me. I nodded back but didn't say anything. At 2 p.m. they host daily activities. Dinner is served at 5. Lights out at 8. He handed me a booklet. This is our activity schedule, he said. I took it but didn't open it. Just slid it into the drawer beside my bed. It's not that I can't adjust. It's that I won't. Because adjusting means accepting. And accepting means I've really left him. Dinner that evening was a tray of carrot chicken nuggets and a bowl of hot soup. I took one bite. It was bland, nearly flavorless. I opened my small leather suitcase and reached into the side pocket for the folded note, Noah's promise. I found a piece of clear tape and stuck it to the wall right above my pillow. That way when I say goodnight I can still touch the edge of his words. It's not that I don't belong here. It's that I refuse to. Because the moment I let this place feel like home, means I've really left him. The people at the retirement home weren't bad. The woman who lived across the hall from me, Mrs. Jenkins, was 75. She had 3 sons. One lived in Japan, another in Germany, and the third hadn't called in over a decade. She didn't talk much, but every night she would softly recite psalms under the glow of her bedside lamp, whispering them line by line. I didn't mind listening. Her voice was calm, steady, almost like a lullaby. One night she said to me, "Once you get used to it here, you don't miss home so much." I nodded. But I didn't reply. Because deep down I already knew, that house, it was never just a house. It was home because Noah was in it. It's been a week since I moved in. David hasn't visited. Not once. Not even a phone call. Laura, on the other hand, sent 2 voice messages. Said they were busy handling paperwork. Said Noah would call me next time. "Grace, are you doing okay?" she asked in the last one. I answered, "I'm fine." "Good," she said and ended the message. I'm not afraid of loneliness. What I fear is being slowly boxed into a transition phase, treated like a temporary obligation, something they're still working on. As if all they need is for me to finally settle in here, and then they can cross me off the list, erase me from their life plans and never have to worry again. That afternoon, a group of student volunteers came by from a nearby university. A cheerful girl walked up to me with a soft smile and held out a printed activity schedule. "Mrs. Whitaker, we're offering crafts and singing this week. Would you like to join us?" I smiled and shook my head. I can't carry a tune and my hands aren't so steady anymore. She kept smiling. "That's okay. You can just sit and watch if you'd like." I nodded politely. She stood by my bed for a moment, her gaze drifting to the note taped to the wall by my pillow. Softly she asked, "Did your grandson write that?" I froze for a second, then nodded. "That's really sweet. I bet he misses you a lot." I didn't answer. After she left, I reached up and touched the corner of that paper. It's not that I can't get used to this place. It's that I won't. There's nothing wrong here, but there's no old gas stove with the uneven flame, no little herb plant I've been tending for 10 years out on the balcony, and no small warm body slipping under the covers beside me in the middle of the night. There's only me. I follow the schedule like clockwork. Every day is a clean, orderly document, formatted, structured, correct. But there's no warmth in it. That night I dreamed I was back in the kitchen. A tray of peanut butter cookies was baking in the oven. Noah stood beside me, carefully using a fork to move the cookies to the cooling rack. When I woke up, my eyes were wet. And I told myself, if I can't even keep that dream, then what am I doing here at all? "Mrs. Whitaker, you've got a phone call." A nurse stood at the entrance of the common room, calling my name across the hall. I set down the ball of yarn in my hands and got up slowly. "Hello. Mom." David's voice. Cool, distant, his usual tone. "Is everything okay over there?" "It's fine," I said. He paused. Then, right on cue, "So, have you had time to think about signing that property management agreement?" No sugarcoating. No preamble. I didn't bother softening my answer either. "I don't intend to sign." Silence. Just for a second. Then a deep sigh. "Mom, this isn't about taking your things," he said. "We're just trying to help you manage everything. You know we're about to move to Canada and the funding on our end is still tight. We've got transfers stalled, paperwork hanging." "I never said you were stealing," I interrupted, calm and even. "I just said, I'm not selling. And I'm not renting." His voice tightened. "If you do this, we can't move forward with any of our plans. You realize that, right?" "Then don't make plans around me," I replied. "This is my house. I've lived in it for 40 years. And whether someone touches it or not, that's my decision to make." He didn't argue. He just hung up. I sat back down on the edge of the bed and opened the nightstand drawer. From underneath the stacked tissues and spare batteries, I pulled out an envelope. Inside was my 1989 Declaration of Sole Property Ownership. I had already made 2 copies. The original was tucked inside the hidden compartment of my old travel suitcase. The second had been handed over to someone I trusted, a lawyer whose father used to handle our family's affairs. She now ran her own firm downtown. I'd requested leave from the home and arranged to meet her at a cafe just outside the facility. "Mrs. Whitaker," she greeted me with a warm smile. "My father used to speak about you all the time. Said you were one of his most honorable clients." I nodded and handed her the document. "They want me to sign this management agreement," I explained. "Say it's just to help them handle things more easily. But I don't trust it. I think they might be making arrangements behind my back." She flipped through the papers, her brow furrowing. "This declaration is old but still legally sound. You're listed as the sole owner. And right here, it clearly states that the property cannot be rented, transferred, or mortgaged without your written or verbal consent." I exhaled, relief washing over me. "However," she added, "I strongly recommend filing a title freeze. That way you can block any unauthorized activity without needing to catch it after the fact." "Yes," I nodded. "Let's do that." She paused, then asked gently, "Have you considered moving back home? You seem unsettled here." I didn't answer right away. It wasn't that I hadn't thought about it. It was that I knew if I returned now, they'd see me as a burden all over again. But I wasn't going to be driven out of what was mine. When I got back to the home, I filed the title freeze immediately. The lawyer also helped me draft and send a formal notice of non-consent, clearly stating that I rejected any form of transaction or management arrangement. Copies went to both David and Laura. 3 days later, the phone rang. This time it was Laura. "Grace," she said, her tone tight. "Are you really not willing to consider our position at all?" "You're moving to another country," I replied. "What does it matter whether I stay in my own home?" There was a pause. "It's not that. It's just, leaving the house empty is a problem too. We can't be juggling everything from across the ocean." So you want to handle me first," I finished for her. "Get me out of the way so you can deal with the house." There was a long stretch of silence. Then she spoke, voice flat and cold. "You're being incredibly selfish, you know that? We're not trying to hurt you." I gave a dry chuckle. "Of course not," I said. "You just want things to be convenient for you." They didn't call again after that. Life at the retirement home went on as usual. But I knew something had shifted. I started keeping a journal, writing down each day each small feeling so I wouldn't forget. I even called Joe, my old neighbor. "How's the basil plant near my back porch?" I asked. He laughed. "I clipped some before you left. Planted it on my balcony. It's blooming now." And suddenly I missed home so badly I could feel it in my bones. I took out Noah's note, the one I kept by my pillow. I read it aloud like a prophecy, like a compass pointing me home. It wasn't about waiting for him to grow up anymore. It was about me going home now. I wasn't selling. I wasn't leaving. On the morning I left the nursing home, the sun was bright and unfiltered. I stood at the front gate holding my old suitcase by the handle. One of the nurses saw me and shook her head gently. "Mrs. Whitaker, are you sure about this?" I nodded. "I'm sure. Thank you." She glanced down at my light, worn-out suitcase and gave a half laugh. "You're a tough one." I smiled and said, "Not tough. Just tired of eating at other people's tables." My old house had been empty for over a year. The mailbox out front was streaked with rust, and a fine layer of dust clung to the welcome mat. Last winter's Christmas lights still hung limply from the eaves, never taken down. I reached into the pocket of my coat and pulled out the key. It slid into the lock with a gentle resistance, and the hinges groaned as the door opened, letting out a creak that sounded almost like a greeting. "Welcome back." I paused in the foyer and took a deep breath. The air smelled like wood, dust, and time. This was where I'd lived for 40 years. The place George and I painted walls, replaced light bulbs, hung a swing in the yard, and planted basil in the kitchen window. I slipped off my shoes and stepped onto the creaky old staircase, letting my hand glide along the railing, worn smooth by decades of use. The kitchen was exactly as I remembered it. Above the stove, the vent hood still had George's old sticky note taped to it. "Don't forget, garlic bread Friday." I took out a cloth and started cleaning, from the windowsill to the doorframe. By 3 in the afternoon, I had replanted the basil in the flower box beneath the kitchen window. Like me, had finally found its way back home. Upstairs, I opened the door to Noah's old room. The bed was still there, blankets neatly folded. His little fleece throw still hung in the corner, next to a faded stuffed bunny. I sat on the edge of the bed and placed my hand gently on the bunny's worn ear. That evening I cooked a quiet dinner: pan-seared salmon, roasted butternut squash, and a bowl of creamy corn chowder. I set the table for two. As I sat down, I whispered softly, "Noah, this one's yours. They're in Canada now." After I notified them that the property had been frozen and would no longer be shared, David replied with only one sentence: "Then we'll follow the plan." And just like that, they moved forward. Terminated the lease. Closed the accounts. Got their visas. Step by step, they backed out of my life. I didn't stop them. I didn't go to the airport. Noah didn't say goodbye. They bought a condo, changed their numbers, and sent me a few photos of their new life. I didn't respond. But I saved everyone. I'm not angry. I've just stopped expecting. I know they won't be back anytime soon. And I know this house from here on out belongs to me and me alone. I started keeping a kitchen journal. What I cooked that day, how much it cost. Which dishes Noah loved. I make special notes beside those. The ones he didn't like, I write those down too. So when he comes back to visit, I'll know what not to make. One day, I received an envelope postmarked from Vancouver. It was from Noah. Inside was a colored pencil drawing. In it, I was standing in the kitchen stirring something over the stove, my apron tied crooked, steam rising from the pot. He stood beside me, mouth wide open in a cartoonish, "Oh," like he'd just been caught sneaking a taste. In the corner, in his wobbly handwriting, he had written, "Grandma, the kitchen is my home." I placed it on the fridge with a small magnet and stood there for a long time staring. And in that moment I understood, what I left behind wasn't just a house. I had left him a memory. The only place in his world that felt warm and safe. At 6 the next morning, I was already sitting at the kitchen window. The sunlight came in at an angle, casting golden light over the table and across a blank sheet of stationery. Wearing my reading glasses, I began to write, slowly, carefully. The words came hesitantly but with intention. It wasn't the first letter I'd ever written in my life, but it was the first one I'd ever written to someone I truly missed. Dear Noah. Grandma's doing well. I repainted the house and finally installed new lights in the kitchen. Your favorite basil is growing again on the balcony. Last week it sprouted new leaves. Big, bright green ones that smell like summer when the breeze rolls through. I still cook every day. I've been airing out your little bed in the afternoons, and I finally sewed the ear back onto your stuffed bunny. I paused, thought for a while, then continued. Grandma's not mad, honey. I know you didn't get a chance to say goodbye that day. I bet that was hard for you too. I'm not in the nursing home anymore. I'm back in our house now. You once told me the kitchen felt like home, that when I cooked, everything felt okay. Well, I've always felt the same way. As long as I could imagine you somewhere in this house, it still felt alive. I reached into the envelope and took out the little note he had once slipped into my coat pocket. Grandma, when I grow up, I'll bring you home. I gently flattened it and used double-sided tape to press it onto the bottom of the letter. His words stitched into the lines of mine. Take care of yourself. Be kind to your parents. And always remember, Grandma is here waiting for you to come back. Love, Grandma. I folded the letter, tucked it into a white envelope and sealed it with a sticker. One of those cartoon cats hugging a peanut butter cookie. Noah used to love those little things, always sticking them everywhere. On his school folders, the fridge, his backpack. I carried the letter to the post office in town. Stood in line. Bought an international airmail stamp. The woman at the counter glanced at the address and smiled. Oh, that's sweet. Your grandson. I nodded. Yes, it's for him. She smiled wider. Well, I bet he's going to love getting this. I said, I hope it makes him smile. Back home I made lunch just like always. Days passed with no reply. But I wasn't worried. Then one morning while I was out in the yard hanging laundry, I heard the mailbox clink. I walked over and there it was. A blue and white airmail envelope, stamped from Canada. In the recipient line, written in slanted, uneven letters, it said, To Grandma. I opened it gently. Inside was a piece of drawing paper and a letter. The drawing was our kitchen again. This time I stood at the stove and Noah was at the doorway, apron tied around his head like he was trying to help. On the table sat 2 peanut butter cookies. One big, one small. The letter read, Dear Grandma. I got your letter. It made me so happy, but it also made me cry a little. Every night before I sleep I think of you. One night I dreamed you were making cookies again. I was sitting by the kitchen door watching you. You looked at me and smiled. When I woke up, I drew that dream and sent it to you. Love you forever, Noah. I taped his letter to the fridge, right at eye level from where I sit to eat. Then I pulled out my old recipe notebook and circled all his favorite dishes again, carefully one by one. After lunch, I gathered the documents I had prepared and slipped them into a manila folder. Then I stepped out the door. That day, I headed to the county land records office to take care of something that had been sitting quietly in my heart for months. At the counter, I handed over the papers one by one. The woman behind the glass tapped at her keyboard, then paused and looked up. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said, "are you sure you want to handle the house this way? Property values in that neighborhood have gone up a lot." I nodded, voice steady but firm. "I'm not worried about the value. I just don't want this home to be forgotten." What I submitted was a legally binding memorandum of intent. The house would be passed on as an inheritance with Noah named as the sole beneficiary. No one else would have a claim. The clerk looked at me, her eyes slightly glassy. "You really love your grandson." I just smiled. I didn't need to say anything. Time passed in quiet rhythms. My knees weren't what they used to be and cooking took me a bit longer. Before bed, I used a heating massager to ease the ache in my feet. But I never felt old. I only felt like someone who was waiting. I waited for Noah to grow up. I waited for him to come back to this kitchen soaked in sunlight, to sit in the same old chair he always loved and call out, "Grandma, I'm home." 4 years later, I was in the kitchen peeling sweet potatoes. The wind outside had picked up and the curtains puffed in and out like sails. I couldn't find my reading glasses, so I slowed my hands, humming softly as I worked. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." It was his favorite lullaby. Then, soft but urgent, there came a knock at the door. I set the peeler down, wiped my hands on my apron and shuffled over to open it. When I pulled the door open, I froze. Noah stood there. His hair was a little longer. He wore a navy coat and carried a canvas backpack slung over one shoulder. His nose was pink from the cold. His eyes were red too. "Grandma," he said. I opened my mouth but nothing came out. Before I could say a word, he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me, tight. The way he used to when he was small and sick, just back from the hospital, needing to make sure I was really there. I held him, patting his back gently. Slow, rhythmic, like I did years ago to soothe him to sleep. We stood there in the doorway for what felt like a long time. Then he pulled back, his eyes still wet, but his mouth curved in a trembling smile. "Grandma, I'm home." I pulled him inside. He dropped into his usual chair at the kitchen table, looking around wide-eyed. "Nothing's changed," he said. "Except you. You've changed." I cupped his face and laughed. "You've gotten taller. Skinnier too." His voice was thick. "I kept dreaming about this place. Every night I'd see you in the kitchen cooking. I was so scared you'd forget about me." I laughed. "I still remember the night you wet the bed. How could I ever forget you?" He let out a wet, sniffly laugh. Part tears, part relief, full of something that felt like coming home. "Do you still like peanut butter and chocolate?" I asked. "Of course I do," he grinned. "I made a fresh batch this morning," I said, heading toward the stove. "Just how you like them, extra peanut butter, dark chocolate filling, gooey in the center." As I reached for the bowl, he suddenly pulled a small box from his bag. "This," he said, a little shy, "is a collection of the letters I wrote you over the years. And some photos. I didn't send them, but I always meant to. I kept thinking, one day I'd hand them to you myself." I took the box from him. It was heavier than it looked, full of years we hadn't spoken aloud but hadn't forgotten either. I looked at him gently. "What brought you back, sweetheart?" "I signed up for a short-term exchange program," he said. "There's a break before it starts. Mom and Dad don't know. But I wanted to come here first." He looked at me, serious and clear-eyed. "I didn't sneak away. I had to see you first." Then he smiled softly. "I told myself a long time ago, the first thing I'd do once I grew up was bring you home." He paused, then added in a near whisper, "Even though you never really left. I know you've been waiting for me." Just as I set down the warm bowl of peanut butter cookies, he scooped one up, blew on it, and took a big bite. His eyes lit up. "Grandma, it's still the same." I shook my head, smiling. "This house is yours now. The stove, the recipes, even the cookies. All of it." He froze, staring at me. "You're serious?" Of course I'm serious, I said. I filed the paperwork a long time ago. His eyes filled again, his voice cracking. But I can't. I don't even know how to take care of you. There's no rush, I said gently, patting his hand. You've got your own life to live. Just remember, there's a stove here, a pot on the burner, a cookie cooling on the rack. As long as that's true, I'm still here. He bowed his head, eating through his tears. The drops hit the table, soft, steady, grateful. I didn't say anything more. I just reached up and turned the kitchen lights up a little brighter. The light fell across the table, and across the shimmer on his face. He came back in the end. Me. I never left.